What's up, guys? Welcome back to Starting Out Solitary. Drew here. It's week 247, and we are discussing speaking with deity. That's the prompt. So I'm just kind of going to go where my mind takes me. For me, this is kind of a complicated topic because it's multifaceted and layered. I'm pantheistic at heart, right? So for me, every thought, emotion, action, everything I do is in its own way a communication with spirit, with the creating force, whatever you want to call that. So there's that level. And if I want to break it down into more subtle layers, even, communing with nature and with trees and plants and animals, this is also a form of communication with spirit for me. But because the word deity is used specifically, I'm going to delve a little deeper into conversation with personified deity, which to me personally happens very differently. I think that it's all the same, but because this is the way the pantheistic brain works, right? Because you have these different layers. I am part of spirit, right? We are all one, we're all connected, but I am still Drew. And so this interaction with Drew is very unique and specific, right? So for me, it's the same with personified deity. They are part of the whole, but they're a personified part. So the way that you converse and the interactions with will be completely different with each one, possibly. At least that's my experience of it. And that's all I can talk from, really, is my experience having conversation with deity. So many times I have spoken with deity as I'm speaking with you now, and may or may not have gotten a response. That's sort of maybe a one-sided conversation. I only make that distinction because that's not always the way it works for me. Deity will communicate with me via vision. Like I just get a glimpse of something, and by probing that, looking further into it, I may realize that this is a conversation that's happening with deity, right? I've had dreams where I'm interacting with deity, and so this has become a conversation of sorts. There's guidance and there's wisdom and there's whatever messages. Sometimes it's just like intuition. I just get this intuitive hit, and by following that leads me to deity. There's other times where I just feel there's this energy, and for whatever reason, for instance, when I go walk the trail near where I live, there's parts of it that are they're on the sound, this water and swampiness and, whatever. And then there's other parts of it that are just woodland. And in the woodland part, I feel this God energy that I have named Kronos, because that's just what it feels like. It feels like, this wild, and that's just the name that I put to it, right? This energy of this wilderness God out here in these woods. Obviously, that's a Celtic god, but I don't really feel that gods and goddesses are limited by physical geography, personally. That's just my own feeling. But whatever. I don't think it matters what I call it. Like, you can call a tree a fly. It doesn't matter. It's still a tree. It is what it is, regardless of what I name it, right? So there's things like that where there's just this feeling, there's just this knowing that deity is there and that there's this subtle interaction. Very recently, if you watch my She Who Walks Between the Worlds channel, you might know this already, but if you don't, a goddess came to me very recently. Now, my interactions with deity up to this point had been very brief. Gods and goddesses would pop in and out, mostly gods, give me a message or teach me a lesson, and then pop right back out. And again, I'm pantheistic, so I never felt a need. I never had the desire to seek out a matron or patron. I didn't need that in my practice, or at least from my perspective, right? It wasn't something that I felt called to at all. When this goddess started to approach me, I knew it was very different than any other experience I had had of personified deity to date. I've been practicing for 13 years, and never had this experience at all. And by the end of the whole thing, it's a whole thing, I realized that she is presenting as a matron. And this is a very bizarre, unusual, strange thing for me. I am accustomed to working with certain energies. And so I work with what I refer to as angels. I don't think it matters what you call it. That's just the name I choose to label it. For me, it is not exactly what the Abrahamic religions might say, although it's really close. It also ties in with other more ancient civilizations, my understanding and interaction with, but whatever, I label it angels. And then guides. Again, don't think it matters what you call them, but that's what I label them. And I have pretty extensive, more so than with deity, interactions, workings with, and relationships with these energies that I refer to in this manner. And so when this goddess started coming, initially, I thought it was a guide, a new guide, because she presented in the same way. Whereas deity normally just popped in. They popped in through a dream or a flash of a vision, or some big thing happened that led me to them. I mean, somehow they're right there front and center. It's obvious that it's them very quickly, right? But with guides, for me, they always stand at a distance and make themselves known and just watch me for a while and slowly move forward. That's my experience of getting introduced to a new guide, having a new guide step in. And she presented in a very similar fashion. So at first I totally mistook what she was. But then I started to get intuitive hits, and I started all these things, synchronicities, coincidences, whatever you want to call them, started falling into place. I'm now sitting where I am, having been working with her for going on 3 months, I think. Going on 3 months. I am aware that she has been with me for the entire time I've been practicing witchcraft, if not longer than that, and communicating with me in subtle ways that I was not picking up on. I think this idea of talking to, speaking with, communicating with deity can actually be very, very, very subtle and complicated. I say complicated only because it can be happening all the time and we're not aware. I don't know how many witches I've talked to when they finally discover who the goddess or god they're working with is, that they look back and they say, they've been here trying to talk to me for some time now. They weren't just aware, one day. It's such a subtle thing. And there could be many reasons for that. It could be that we're not fully ready until we're ready, and they're just sort of guiding the way subtly, or there could be any number of reasons why this is, right? I do personally believe that everything happens in its time and it happens for a reason. So that's kind of the lane that I fall into with regards to why it might be that way. I don't know if I'm getting off a topic here. I just think that there are many ways to communicate with deity. Now that I have a matron, she has a shrine, and I greet her each and every single day. I consider it to be a devotional purely because it's something that I do every day. So to me, I'm devoted to that, right? And then there's various other ways that I'm beginning to work with her. But that is a way that I speak to her, that I communicate with her, is by having a special place of reverence for her and making even a minute or two for her every single day. I have called on other gods and goddesses in the past to do workings or what have you, and I believe that I'll probably continue to do so. I feel that, if I go sit out on the earth, I could see, labeling that energy I'm communing with as Gaia, and I'm speaking with her and communicating with her, so the green man. I feel that I do speak with deity, personified deity, fairly well now all the time, but even in the past, fairly regularly, just on a very subtle, maybe intuitive, organic level. I am sure my experience is different than other people's experiences. So if you have some other ways that you speak or you feel that deity speaks with you, drop it in the comment. I would love to hear. And I'm going to just stop talking because, this is a pretty long video for starting out solitary. So I think I've said everything I can say about this anyway. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, much love and gratitude.